Hi, I'm David. This is Sapiens Forward with news and discussion on AI topics that matter to regular people. Thank you for checking out the show. Today is June 9th, 2025, and this show is being recorded as a live stream, so it's going to be unedited, unfiltered. That way, you know it's real. In the show today, we're going to take a look at some news topics that have come across my feed in the past day, and we're going to dig right into them. Let's get started with number one. Obvio's stop sign cameras use AI to detect unsafe drivers. So tech startup Obvio has raised 22 million to deploy AI-powered cameras at stop signs that automatically detect traffic violations and issue citations. Sounding good so far. Solar-powered pylons process footage locally and then delete non-violation recordings with 12 hours to address privacy concerns. So a lot of good stuff going on there. One, I'm liking technology that's AI powered that is serving the common good, right? So people just driving right through stop signs or stoplights or things like that. That's just stuff we got to put a stop to. It's always been a problem, and I feel like it's always going to be a problem. So any kind of tools that we can deploy to help deter people from doing it, I think is a good thing. Now, we talk about AI tools. Sometimes, one of the AI principles I talk about is AI, and people think, oh, AI is bad or AI is all good. I think this is clearly a case where AI can be a good thing. However, with all things, it can be taken too far. So they're addressing, Obvio, the company, the startup here, is addressing one of the potential concerns that people seem to often have relating to these types of technologies, which is that, well, it's recording information about people. This is being used potentially as surveillance. What are the authorities or policing institutions going to be using this data with if people aren't committing crimes? And so I think that's a legitimate concern. Certainly, some countries employ cameras for policing style surveillance more than others. There's not as much of it in the United States, I would say. So I think this particular startup is kind of getting in front of some of those concerns in certain regions like the U.S., where people may not be quite as ready for this kind of technology, especially if AI is involved and that sort of thing. So it sounds like the way that they are getting around that is to make sure that the data is collected locally. So when I say locally, I mean like at the point of the device where it's set up on these pylons. And so apparently not actually transmitting the data to the authorities or the municipalities until it's actually determined that there's been some kind of violation. And of course, their business model looks to be that, some kind of revenue sharing or something like that. I think it's kind of interesting. I think there's something there. I'm gonna pull up the website. I think they got some video on it. So I think it's pretty interesting. You can see kind of a little bit how the system works. I mean, you can see the video, it's being processed by the AI system, and you can see the boxes around like a car or something like that. It's essentially trying to identify if they're following the rules of the road, or they just, stop sign violations, seatbelt violation. So there you go. Some people may not be keen about this type of technology being put forth, but I personally I feel pretty strongly about safety on the road, so I think it can be a good thing. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. What we got? All right, so Facebook is apparently replacing its human moderators with AI. Reports are Meta plans to automate 90% of privacy and integrity reviews using AI systems. We've talked about something else previously, which is that Meta looks to be trying to find a way to automate more in house with AI, the generative AI tools that can be used for developing advertising materials. So it seems like there's a variety of areas that Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, and Threads, things like that, are looking to utilize AI rather than having people directly involved in that social media pipeline, as it were. Certainly, Meta, I think, looks at it like a pipeline as far as making money. So yeah, shifting like 90% content moderation decisions to AI without human review. I think it's probably fairly clear that the reason for this kind of move is for them to make money. And that's, I suppose they're right because they are a company and they are designed to make money. Why would folks like you and me care about this? Well, if you're using Facebook, which some of the readers and followers of Sapiens Forward channel are on Facebook, you might be interested to know if AI is involved with moderating content. Might be interested to know or to understand, what is going on with that, what kind of algorithms are in play, what kind of models are going to be doing that. It really makes one wonder, what kind of content is going to be allowed, what kind of content will be blocked. I get a general feel. So here's just my straight up opinion. I feel like the general feel for like the platform, like Facebook as an example, is that content moderation has kind of fallen off a little bit. Some things that seem a little bit more on the extremes are showing up more than in the past, and makes me wonder if this sort of AI content moderation already is in place and they're just testing it out. Um, but it's hard to really say until the company puts out more information on that. One thing I think is it's probably fairly safe to say is that content moderation, while most people, users like myself, will look at it from the standpoint of user safety, like not wanting to have harmful or illegal or just really inappropriate content showing up on a platform. Um, any of these platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, certainly they have different types of audiences, different demographics. I have children, they might get on social media at some point, trying to delay that as long as I can. But, I'd like to hope that the platform prevents them from seeing things that, a parent wouldn't want them to see. But, again, back to my original point I was kind of getting at, from my experience in digital marketing and strategy, I do know that oftentimes concepts and thinking about in terms of content moderation, especially in the light of like advertising, is not necessarily about user safety. It's more about brand safety. Um, Companies that are looking to advertise on a platform, they may not be so keen to do so if the platform is letting all kinds of perceived harmful or damaging types of content material just run rampant on the platform, because inevitably people who are users of the platform, customers, whatever, what have you, they will start to associate those negative um, elements with the company that's trying to do advertising, and they won't like that. They don't want their brand to be damaged. So it's kind of a cynical take on this, but ultimately, platforms that Meta controls like Facebook and Instagram, when it comes down to content moderation, it's probably rooted in their brand customers, and not in actual user safety. So if it's perceived that these platforms are kind of deprioritizing user safety, the fact that user safety was a part of it ever was probably just an extra benefit and not actually the main point of it. Sad to think, but I don't think I'm too far out from that. Either way, you know, we talk about how AI control matters to everyone. Meta controls some AI models. It's going to use their systems are going to just work however they feel like having them work, and we will just have to see how that goes. So that's interesting. All right, let's go on to the next topic. Amazon is testing humanoid robots to deliver packages. So this is kind of in that area that I think kind of blurs between AI and robotics. When I was younger and many years ago, I think a lot of folks really equated the idea of AI and robotics as one and the same. And I think with the advent of some of these more prominent generative AI models and large language models in recent years, last few years, um, and what they're capable of, just purely from a computational standpoint, they're just running on computers in the cloud. Um, Really fascinating, but really kind of dispelled this whole idea that AI was going to be connected to robots, autonomous robotic devices, right? And I do think there were many people decades ago who thought, well, we'll be fine, because it's going to take a long time before robotics really catch up, so we don't have to worry about this AI stuff. Well, AI can operate in the cloud and it can do all kinds of things that's knowledge based and research based and information based. It has nothing to do with having an actual physical body to move around. Now, at some point, and I know clearly companies are working on it right now, they are looking to combine those. Amazon is looking to see how they can use humanoid robots to deliver packages. So, what's that going to look like? Well, apparently, Amazon is building this kind of testing ground in San Francisco somewhere where their initial versions of delivery robots essentially could be tested out with human workers and some kind of like obstacle course. And what it looks like from reports are that their ultimate goal, at least in the near term, is to combine these with the delivery vehicles, right? So, you've probably seen them driving around town. They stop at the houses. The person who's the Amazon delivery person grabs the boxes, runs it up to the front steps. Well, what I can imagine here, and I'm sure this is what Amazon is looking to do, is they have the delivery van is kind of like a little mothership for some of these delivery robots, and they pop out and they take the boxes up to the front door and then come back to the van. Now, how long will it take to get to that? It's hard to say. I mean, things that we thought were going to take decades seem to only take a few years in recent time. But certainly, this is a bit more complicated than just a large language model, AI tool like ChatGPT, consuming some text and doing some linguistic magic with it. This is the idea of like a robotic device operating fairly autonomously, moving around an environment with obstacles and things that are hard to predict. Now, seeing some of these companies out there like Boston Dynamics, who's really been at the forefront of robotics for many, many years, and some of the devices that they have the state of the art. You see some of the stuff from Tesla with like their Optimus robot, whatever. Clearly, where the state of the art is right now is it's really, really bleeding edge and capable of doing a lot. So I don't necessarily think that this is several years away. I think it's going to be interesting though to see how it ultimately pans out. Um, I don't think it's initially going to take a lot of jobs away necessarily for this particular component because it is going to be a bit more complex, and they're probably going to need to have, it might change the role of the delivery person. They might, instead of them walking up the boxes, they might be walking up as a last resort when the robot falls over, crashes on the mailbox or something like that, and they need to do like a rescue of it or something like that, right? Um, kind of a side thing here. I do feel like the folks that are working in the actual Amazon warehouses themselves, I think based on what I've seen in reports of, the increases in automation, you look at some of the factories and warehouses in China, what they're doing, just completely automated with robots. I feel like the jobs in warehouses are much more risk in the near term for replacement than, the actual delivery drivers. Um, Certainly that's my own speculation just on my own research and what I've been doing, but there you go. It's certainly fascinating. I think, there's, even if there's going to be disruption. We talk about that quite a bit. Like there's going to be disruption, and it's just a matter of like who is it going to impact and when and how severe. It may be the case that with a reduction in cost of shipping because of the introduction of robotics, and bear with me here, it could make it so that buying things off of Amazon is even more reduced in cost and expense for a customer, which enables people to use it more and buy more. That's one of those kind of concepts with capitalism and things like that, that it's easy to forget sometimes. If you can reduce the cost and people can use it more, so even if there is disruption, there may be growth in jobs in other places. Certainly many of the AI optimists, that's the concept that they're talking about. Now, I mean, personally, I wouldn't consider myself an optimist or pessimist. I feel like I'm fairly practical in the middle, in that there's going to be some things that don't work out very well. There's going to be disruption, and there's going to be things that we'll take advantage of and will improve our quality of life. The key will be figuring out, what are those things that help us and latch onto that, and what are the things that hurt us, and we try and mitigate that. So looks like big things are coming for Amazon. So we'll see what develops with that. All right, let's go on to the next story. So Anthropic researchers warn that humans could end up being meat robots controlled by AI. So this has a much weirder tone to it, not quite as interesting as like the robots doing delivery stuff. So let's dig into this. So some of the people who work at Anthropic were in a podcast recently and talking about what are some of these future systems that could impact jobs. Now, certainly we've talked about just recently about the CEO of Anthropic making some pretty bold claims about 50% or so of white collar jobs just disappearing in, the next few years, decades, something like that. Well, some other folks at Anthropic are also talking about this, and man, I guess they just really want to be in the news. But they, kind of echoing those statements about really significant white collar job displacement. They also talk about what that could potentially look like for the work that remains. Now, I want to say, like, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of these projections and speculations. I do believe, and I think everybody should recognize, that there is going to be displacement and disruption. That is going to be a part of what happens with AI continuing to be rolled out and incorporated into our society. It doesn't mean it has to be necessarily bad, but it doesn't mean it'll all be good either. And so we'll have to like work through that together. That's part of why I put together this project and this channel, is we can all stay apprised of what's happening, find ways to work through this, right? Well, some of their thoughts here, and this is what I think is, it's kind of interesting from an academic standpoint, but kind of alarming on a different side. When you talk about like meat robots, what they're referring to is the idea of that you could take some type of work that could potentially be augmented by AI in a very positive way. But the AI essentially, if it's operating so much in the kind of the informational space, and that's what we were talking about a few minutes ago, right? Like, robots and AI aren't very tightly connected yet. The AI tools we've been working with in the recent few years have been primarily operating in the cloud and cloud computing and informational types of tasks. Well, if you think of it from the standpoint that those AI systems, if they become more advanced and more independent and able to assign other tasks and things for other systems like agents, they could also potentially assign tasks to humans for things that the AI system itself is not geared to do. That's in a physical environment. It may be more productive for the AI system to collaborate with humans and people to ultimately get the job done that needs to be done. Now, I think we'd all like it to be in reverse, where humans are directing the AI tools. But these folks at Anthropic, I think, are really kind of looking at it from the reverse, in the sense that AI is directing the humans. And, there could be this idea that, maybe humans have earbuds in and special augmented glasses on. And essentially the AI is just talking to them in ear to them. All right, pick up this here and put it over here, put it in a box 29 and move this onto the conveyor belt to row A, and, blah, 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 right? Just the AI is basically turn the humans into meat robots. That's what they mean. When you say meat robots, they mean like a flesh and blood. It's a really kind of grotesque analogy that they use. It's not one I'm keen on, but I get their point. Is that that concept would reduce human robots? Well, I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, I think that would be kind of the lowest level type of job. And my hope, and I would say my belief, is that there's always going to be a role for humans to have a meaningful place and contribution to be made, primarily because the social and emotional and experience-based component of what it means to be human and our humanity is something that like these robots and AI won't be able to capture. Even if the AI becomes super super advanced, its experience is going to be remarkably different from ours as a human of flesh and blood, right? And so there's going to be many things, many experiences, many tasks, many ways that we're going to continue to collaborate and work together in the future. That's somebody's going to want to work with a person rather than just a robot or AI. They're like, can I just talk to a person, you know? And so those are the types of jobs and roles that we'll need to gravitate to. We're going to talk about that more on the channel. But that all side, thinking of this concept of maybe these lower order types of jobs with AI enabling it, I would just take a moment here and think about, you look at some of these movies. If you watch any like the Marvel um, movies in the last decade or so, and starting with like the Iron Man movies, right? And so, Iron Man, the character has, the AI system Jarvis that he's interacting with. He's got like the visor on and everything over his mask, and he's seen all kinds of heads-up displays. And he's getting information from the AI system. It's helping him do what he's doing. And there's even some cases, I can't remember the exact movies and stuff like that. I don't want to bring it up on the stream, but it's like, basically it's directing him, giving him instructions on how to do something, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if there's a situation where you need to do something and you don't know how to do it, and you need instructions on how to do it, but there's nobody available to give you the instructions, but you really need to do it. I mean, maybe there's some kind of emergency, or there's just a job that needs to be done to fix something in your house, in your car. AI can help with that. I mean, we're already seeing cases where you can take like your mobile phone with like one of the AI tool apps installed, turn on like visual and voice mode. You can have it in a multimodal format. So multimodal means multiple modes of operation. So it could be combining visual by allowing it to use your camera on your phone to see what it is you're seeing, and voice so it can talk to you while you're doing that. And at some point, probably augmenting and providing guidance in that. It's like, hey, I'm trying to change the bulb in the headlights in my car, and I'm not sure what I'm doing here and where to play. And you can show it to it, and it's like, oh, look right here. I'll create a little indicator in the video screen to show you what you need to do. You need to turn that, unscrew it, pull it out, and replace it right there. It's like, okay, that could be great. Now, there could be problems with that. I mean, people becoming ultra reliant on something like that, but I can totally imagine some positive benefits to that sort of thing. So let's hope that this idea of AI augmented work shifts more to helping humans do things that they weren't particularly capable of doing previously, rather than the reverse of humans helping AI doing things that the AI is not capable of. I like the former better than that. All right, let's move on to the next, and I think the last topic for today. So in the UK, tech job openings climbed 21% to pre-pandemic highs, boosted by AI skills demand. So I've seen in the news recently that there are reports in various places that there's increased job demand, increased revenue potential or projections, specifically in companies that are, how would we put it, um, kind of geared towards being impacted by AI. So whether they're creating AI systems themselves or they are using AI very directly as part of their operations, we're seeing growth in demand for roles that utilize AI. And as companies, consequently, they're also seeing potential growth in revenue. So this particular article going back straight to the idea that job openings go climbing. So it's fascinating because one of the topics that I talk about on the channel is employment, right? So I really, on this channel, we're really concerned with topics that matter to regular people. I say regular people like just me, like, I'm not a startup creator. I'm not a CEO. I'm not a tech leadership person. Like, I work a job every day, 9 to 5, and I got a family and a mortgage, right? So I care about employment, and a lot of other people like me care about employment because we want to know, like, is our job at risk? Um, that sort of thing. What's going to happen with the job market? And we can see here that job vacancies are growing in the UK, as an example, and driven by growth in AI skills demand. So with that kind of surge in skill demand, people who are following some of those AI principles that I talk about, one being AI literacy being essentially required, AI literacy, right? So those people who are taking that time to understand what AI tools can do, what are their limitations, how can it be applied to their daily work, their jobs, their lives, and just become generally aware of what these things are. They have potential benefit to them. I don't really think it's really selling your soul to figure out how to use AI for work. If it can help you take care of your family by keeping your job and potentially making more money, I think that's all right. I mean, there's a lot of questions about AI use in other areas like intellectual property and copyright stuff, and those are all really valid. But in a lot of these cases, many of these workers, they're just using stuff like, you know, Microsoft Copilot, right? To do more in their day to kind of take care of the busy work and make it easier. Or they're using somebody's code assistance tools like Codex or Claude Code to increase the velocity of their development. So I think I think that's a really great thing to see. We have noticed that you know not every company is just firing people. That there's been a lot in the news about tech companies doing layoffs, and other companies reporting on here of like Workday and Klarna and others, like essentially laying off people, going all in on AI. It's not like that everywhere. There are some companies hiring people, but I wouldn't be the first person to say that it's not unexpected when you have this displacement and disruption going on. There will be some jobs that will be lost and they'll go to the wayside, and there'll be new jobs created that are primarily around using AI or enhancing things with AI or being augmented by AI. It's fairly predictable. I think we can expect that that's going to continue to be the case, and it's going to grow. So, like I said, check out AI, check out the tools, figure out how you can use incorporate in your life, and follow the channel. Talk a lot a bit about how you can utilize AI for different things and how it's impacting work and life for people. So that's it for the news today. So again, if you found this type of content valuable or useful, really appreciate it. Just do a like on the video, or follow the channel if you'd like to get this kind of news on a regular basis. We're doing these news streams to make sure that everybody stays apprised on what's happening out there. Anyway, thanks so much and take care. See you next time.